Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg, and today I'm playing a little Gorn. This is host commentary. For a few reasons. One, the microphone quality is better. Two, it's a pretty hectic game, so my commentary wouldn't be great otherwise. And three, most of what you'd be hearing are just kind of grunts and heavy breathing and things like that, because it's quite an athletic, exercisey kind of game. But what it is a gladiatorial combat game for virtual reality. It's only available on Steam, but you can play any Steam VR title with the Rift, so that's no problem. So yeah, pretty much you are thrown into an arena with a number of combatants, and there will be kind of a few waves of combatants, and they are decked out in varying degrees of armor, depending. And they also have varying weapons. And at the start, you are given a selection of weapons to start with. You know, whether that's a weapon and a shield, or two weapons, or a two-handed weapon, or a bow and arrow, or what have you. And yeah, you have to survive. You can take one hit and survive. If you take two hits, you are done, and it's you go back to the lobby. And so that can be pretty tricky. You may notice that the enemies are, they skipped leg day, pretty much. The game is, it's probably actually like the best melee combat that I have played as far as VR goes. Really the biggest problem, and why so many games are, you know, shooters, whether that's guns or bows or whatever, is because melee generally depends a lot on feedback. You know, to actually, you know, feel like you've collided with something. You know, feel weight and, you know, resistance and things like that. And I'm not saying Gorn has fixed that issue. We won't fix that issue for quite a while, I'm sure. But despite not having any sort of feedback, Gorn is still very satisfying to play. Because they kind of do everything right for the most part that doesn't involve feedback. You can dismember all the opponents. You know, their legs can be chopped off, arms can be chopped off. You can, as you might see, you can tear their hearts out with a spear. You can chop their heads off. You can bash their faces in. It's very satisfying. I got a heart on the end of my spear, and then I stab the guy in the face with it. And the AI is not stupid. You can see me getting my ass kicked here because they will try to flank you. Some of the weapons that they use can be a little spastic, I guess. They kind of just flail it around a little bit, but that's actually pretty effective for their part. So, the other thing is, I'm not actually certain about this. I have not tested it. I've not looked it up. I just started playing, and I just went with it. I'm not sure if it actually does measure how hard you are swinging something, or thrusting something, or whatever. But when you're playing the game, like, I have no interest in, like, just, like, Wiimote waggling around a weapon and, like, just getting in hits and hits and hits. Like, when I'm swinging a weapon, I am fully freaking swinging a weapon. Every hit here you see, like, I'm doing a full swing of my arm. I want to say that it does, like, more damage if you do it that way. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to continue to believe that just because that's more satisfying to me. Which makes it a very tiring game, because you're actually, like, you know, you don't have the weight of anything. You're just holding this little controller, but you're still getting the movement of your arm, and so it is tiring after a while. And so, you know, you have a bunch of different weapons. You have a mace, a flail. You have a hammer. You have a sword. You have kind of like a dagger. You have a spear. You have a bow and arrow. You have a giant flail. A giant hammer. Maybe some other stuff. That's what I've found so far. So here, trying out the bow and arrow. All those hours in the lab kind of pay off. I'm a pretty decent shot. Pretty decent, not perfect, and the mechanics are a little bit different, but the problem with starting with the bow is you don't really have a weapon, and then they tend to kick your ass. So movement. Of course, all sorts of VR games do all sorts of different movement types, and so Gorn has it. You can use the thumbsticks if you want. It has thumbstick movement for the I don't know why it has thumbstick movement considering the Vive controllers don't have thumbsticks. But you can do that with the Oculus, but I decided not to do that. Because the default movement involves basically like skiing, I guess. You basically like swing your arms back and forth as if you're like exaggeratingly like running while holding down buttons. And so you kind of alternate. It's fairly natural, I guess, once you get into it. It's not exactly the fastest form of movement because you do have to swing your arms. And you're kind of pulling yourself along, but I mean, you'd have to do it to understand what I'm talking about. Anyways, yeah. So basically, the regular arena mode, which is what I'm going through here now, has, look at this, just carnage. It just has a series of levels that are increasingly difficult, which means that they have more waves of enemies. Generally, the enemies get... There's going to be more armored enemies, although there'll still be unarmored ones. They introduce new weapons. The enemies get the weapons first, and you actually have to like pick up the weapons off the ground and get kills with it, and then you can unlock it for yourself, which is a cool system. I like that. That's pretty nice. And the different weapons have sort of different properties, as you might expect. It's fairly realistic in that term. You know, the spear is not great against armor unless you're very precise. I'm just checking out like the rest of the lobby, which tells you what you've not unlocked yet. I mean, I only played the game for like an hour and a half, and I unlocked almost everything. So it's early access and all that, and VR games are still, you know, they continue working on it and adding stuff. So I'm not too concerned. Anyways, you know, if you're precise with a spear and you can stab them just where their armor kind of. You know, there's holes in their armor. The spear works pretty well. The spear absolutely demolishes unarmored targets. It is the best weapon by far because it has reach, and you just stab them in the face and they're done. But, I mean, against an unarmored target, pretty much anything is fairly good. The sword is really good. The axe is good. The bow is really good. And they'll actually, as you get kills with the bow and arrow, the crowd will actually throw arrows down for you to pick up. Here I fuck up because his hand is still attached to his weapon that he dropped, and so I can't properly grip it, and so it kind of just messes me up, and he gets in a couple lucky hits. The hammer is the best against armor. It'll shatter that really easily. So one strategy is to have kind of the hammer in one hand and then sort of a slashing weapon in the other hand, like the axe or the sword. You can pick up big rocks on the ground, which is fun. There's a challenge to get 7 kills with a rock. You can sort of just bash people's heads in with it. You can also throw it, but I really suck at throwing. You can also punch people, which is pretty satisfying when you manage to like knock a dude down with a punch, and then you're just like standing over him, and you're like literally you're like pantomiming punches, because I mean, it's virtual reality. That's what you have to do. You have to actually punch. But it's, you know, you're just wailing on the back of this dude's head with your fist. It's crazy. So here I kind of went on a rock spree because they didn't really have any weapons, and so I could just bash their faces in, as you can tell. It's not a perfect game. There are, again, sort of the lack of feedback and the lack of enemies can kind of just get kerfuddled with each other, and so you just have this big mess. And you can sort of go inside opponents like that, and then you're just kind of flailing around. It's not perfect. They don't move out of the way, and if you don't move out of the way, you just kind of do that. It has its issues. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of content going on, but it does melee like this better than anything I've seen. When you parry a guy with your weapon and then you like smash his arm in with a hammer, and it's just, or you just cut it right off with a sword and his weapon drops and he's just kind of like standing there with one arm, and then you just chop his head. It's incredible. So I'm really looking forward to the continued development of Gorn, with adding, you know, maybe like more areas rather than just this basic little arena, different enemy types, more weapons, you know, weird stuff, challenges, boss battles, all sorts of stuff. They do have champion battles, which are against a single tougher enemy, but it's actually, those are the easiest thing in the game pretty much. If you're not stupid, it's pretty easy to take out one guy, even if he is armored. I'm not sure if I died a single time to any of the champions. These guys, this is the toughest thing I've done so far. It's 4 completely armored dudes with spears. They don't completely use the spears as OP as I do, but spears are still rough. The thing is that I didn't really pay attention to, for whatever reason, their legs are unarmored, and that's where you want to go for. You want to sweep the leg. If you have a sword, you can just chop off both their legs, and then they're far less effective. But yeah, it is a very exhausting game. I mean, maybe if you're just playing it like a Wiimote, and you know, you're just wagging your fingers or something like that, but maybe it's not so bad. But for me, it's very exhausting because I'm doing full swings, and nothing shows that better than the giant flail, which is a two-handed weapon, as you can see here. So you got to grip it with 2 hands and swing it around, and it's very powerful. I mean, it will send enemies flying across the area. But it has its weaknesses. For one, when they get closer, it's not nearly as effective as you might imagine. The other thing, though, which is far more hilarious to think about, is it's strong, but it's tiring. It's more tiring than a normal weapon. Just so funny to think about that you know, we're at the age where I can actually say something like that. You know, like, you know, you play Dark Souls and it's like, okay, you can use a big two-handed weapon, but, you know, it uses more stamina to swing it. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But now it's like, okay, I'm actually like swinging my arms physically, and yeah, when I'm swinging, when I'm holding both hands up in the air and I'm making these big swinging motions, that's more tiring than just one hand, just a quick slash or a quick, you know, slam or whatever. It's more tiring. I'm telling you, it is. And so it's just very funny to think about that we're entering this age of, I guess, realism. So yeah, you can kind of do this sort of swinging around strategy, which will take care of enemies. The giant fella doesn't actually do as much damage as you might think. It's very good for crowd control. Like, if this was multiplayer, I would want one person to have the giant flail. Unless there was like what the hell is that term? Party team damage, where you can hit your teammates. If that was in there, this would just be a disaster. But yeah, I mean, it will knock out and they'll get, you know, they get the stars around their heads, and then they're just. Sometimes if they get the stars around their head with other weapons, they're down for like 10 seconds. With Giant Flail, they're actually not down for long, but it has this huge reach, and you can just do this. But I figured, you know, this is the final part of this, and I didn't want to just win with the Giant Flail. I wanted to win more honorably. This was foolish, because I pick up the nunchucks, which, you know, a pair of nunchucks, unless you're Bruce Lee, going against two fully armored dudes with spears, you're probably going to get the shit kicked out of you. And, sure. I have not, I haven't gotten a single kill with the nunchucks yet. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much Gorn. Again, for all VR games, my words and the video footage don't really do it justice. The video footage particularly, it's like, I don't know, for some reason it's in like 4:3. It's not even widescreen video footage. And the field of view, like, what I see when I'm playing and what you're seeing on the screen are pretty different things, as you might imagine. For some reason on the video footage, it seems like I'm always like looking down. That's not the case. Generally, I'm looking them in the eye. But for the video footage, it looks like their face is in like the upper half of the screen. And here I like taunt him with his buddy's head, but I suck at throwing, so... And here I'm like struggling to get the spear, but I got him. Again, you know, it's melee like, you know, they're swinging something at you and you're putting your head back to try and avoid it. You know, it's visceral in a way that gaming in the past really has never been. And this is one of the more, I guess I would say it's one of the more space-requiring games. Requiring is probably not the right word, because I play in a fairly small area, which you're always going to want more room, because for me, I have to always kind of be mindful of where I am in the room and which direction I'm facing and what's around me, which takes you out of the game experience. You're not thinking, oh, I'm in this big arena fighting gladiators. It's like, no, I'm in my room. There's a picture right there. I gotta not put my hand through it. So of course you can play in a smaller area. It's just unfortunate. You want the biggest area possible, so you can really swing your arms around. Yeah, I mean, you get these frantic moments where you're just... You got this like half a shield you're holding up, and you're desperately like watching the attacks and trying to block them so you don't take a hit, and you're also trying to like break their helmets so you can kill them, and you're I mean, that would be my version of flailing, I guess, but I'm still trying to put my full weight into the arm swing so I can do damage. So here I just have a shield. I don't even have a weapon against the final spear dude. I'm hoping I can make it work. The problem with when I'm trying to run is it's very slow. They tend to catch up pretty quickly. So I decided to go for the spear, and I'm like, the legs, that's perfect. And so here I just start stabbing him in the kneecaps over and over. And at that point, he lost his spear. He's done. He's just done. There's no hope for this man. Look at those legs. Those have seen better days. And I can't seem to stab him in the mouth. There, finally I get it. He's not dead though. Oh, he lost. Oh, perfect. Get that hard and just keep stabbing him because I beat the level. And so the crowd showers you with coins, and you raise your hands in victory. That's how you end the level. You have to raise your hands in victory, which is good because it always feels good when you do that. So my goal for the video was to fight the champion. So I have to win 3 more battles until I can fight the champion. So entering a new level, I guess I decided to try out the dagger for you, and I'll grab an axe for backup. The dagger is very small. If I were an actual gladiator, I would probably not pick that loadout. I don't know what I would actually pick. Probably the bow and arrow. I would hope my video game skills would transfer over, which, you know, years ago would be laughable, but now that I've done so much VR, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. I would bank on it. So there is the first enemy that actually had a bow and arrow for himself, which startled me. I didn't know what to do. I was like a deer in the headlights, and so I died. And so you can see the starting enemies here. I see a lot of armor. I see a dude with a giant hammer, which also makes its first appearance. So I'm like, okay, I grab the hammer to break the armor and the mace to break their skull. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the game. It's very entertaining. It's one of the better VR experiences I've had, even though, you know, there's not a whole lot of content. What you have here is very entertaining. If I were having like a VR party, this would absolutely be a part of it. Just because it's just, you know, it's very easy to get into. The controls are pretty like literally there's like one button to pick up a weapon, and then you teach them how to move, and that's pretty much all you need. Tell them to kill. Here I finally get my hands on the giant hammer, but I see this guy to my left has a bow and arrow, and he doesn't come out of his little entrance, so I have to back up against a wall and hope he peeks his head out. He eventually does. The giant hammer is very satisfying. I like that better than giant flail. And again, you're I mean, you know that you don't have a giant hammer in your arms because that would be a lot heavier, but when you're swinging your hands, you know, it's pretend. You're pretending you have a giant hammer in your hands. And a very small backwards part of your brain is like, okay, we'll go with that. And yeah, it's just great. But what I want to talk about, though, because when I was first starting playing this game, what I was thinking about was the children. Won't somebody please think of the children? In the past, politicians have, you know, commonly, you know, in order to appease, you know, worried mothers, about the concerns they have for video games corrupting our youth. You know, like Doom, Mortal Kombat was pretty much kind of the whole start of that. I don't know if there was much concern before that because video games weren't very popular. Well, they were in the arcades, but nobody cared about kids back then. Really, I mean, Doom was kind of the main thing for a while because it had that link to the Columbine shooters and blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, certain people have been worried for many years about the effects that violent video games have on children and how it will desensitize them to violence, and it'll make them feel like, you know, it's not a big deal to just grab a gun and shoot something. You know, there's no real weight behind it or no repercussions or whatever. It'll affect their thinking, their mental, you know, processing. And of course, as any video gamer will tell you, that's just utter nonsense. Because playing Call of Duty and shooting up a bunch of terrorists using a controller is, I mean, I don't know, but I'm going to assume nothing like actually shooting up a bunch of terrorists with a gun. There's no real emotion linked behind it. You're just pressing buttons on a controller, and when you get angry playing a video game, you know, you play Halo or Call of Duty online or, you know, something like that, and you get angry at something, and you just, you know, you swear and you play harder and you push the buttons harder. You know, you might throw the controller or whatever. You're playing a game. And of course, that's what gamers have been saying as a counterpoint for decades. It's just, we know the difference between fantasy and reality. We know the difference between real life and a video game, and there's really no reason to even compare, you know, shooting someone in real life and shooting someone in a game, or stabbing someone, or punching them, or blah blah blah. Because of, you know, back in the day, the graphics, there was like, you know, there was no way you could even compare on a graphical level a video game in real life. That's just a joke. Not to mention you're holding a controller in your hands. You're watching it on a screen. You know, you're 5 feet away from this activity. There's just this complete disconnect. It was laughable that it would actually influence people. And if it did, you know, they had mental, you know, problems in the first place. You know, you can't blame video games for that, just like they couldn't blame Dungeons and Dragons for all that kind of bullshit. So it was pretty much just a joke, and we all kind of knew it. And I'm certainly on that side of things, that I don't really think video games could have affected children. I've played plenty of I played Diablo when I was 6 years old, and I'm not running through the streets butchering people or anything like that. But as I was playing Gorn here, I started to think, huh. I mean, here I was, physically, like, using my hand, my arms, my physicality, my muscles, and all that, physically swinging and physically punching a humanoid target, and seeing blood gush out because of my physical actions. Now, I'm not saying Gorn is going to fuck up kids. I highly doubt it, because it's very cartoonish. The whole thing is very janky and cartoonish, and there's no feedback or anything like that. But it made me think about, what about in 20 years? Or 30 years? You know, what about when we're playing The Last of Us 5 or whatever? You know, when it's in full virtual reality, you have a full, you know, like Ready Player One, where you're actually, like, immersed completely in it. And you are physically doing all these actions, and you are strangling people, or you're beating them with a pipe, or you're shooting them in the face, or what have you. I think that argument has a lot of credence then, of this can affect people. You know, it's blurring into reality at that point. And, you know, when I was playing Gorn, I got angry. You know, I was dying, you know, I was losing, and so of course that gets you angry. And rather than just, I'm gonna push a button harder, or I'm gonna, you know, just drop the controllers, no, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker as hard as I physically can. I'm going to swing as hard as I physically can. I'm gonna punch the air as hard as I can. And yeah, I know I'm punching the air, but through my eyes, through my ears, I'm punching his face in. You know, when you're playing Robo Recall or what have you, a lot of VR games, you're generally fighting robots or things like that. VR developers kind of are avoiding humanoid targets, just because of reasons that I'm kind of talking about. But Gorn here, you're fighting humans, and yeah, they're very goofy looking, very cartoonish, but they are human. They are humans. They are meant to be humans. Or some human giant variant, whatever. But they have the anatomy, for the most part, of a human. And they have the red blood of a human. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of scary, to be honest. Not yet, maybe. And I'm speaking as a fucked up 27-year-old. I don't exactly know, but I'm not sure how, if I had an 8-year-old kid or something like that, and they were playing Gorn, you know, I'm not exactly sure what that would do. If I gave them Super Metroid, you know, I'm pretty sure that's not going to mess them up. But Gorn, or Gorn 6 in 15 years or something, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Emotions, you know, in VR, emotions you can actually physically kind of act out. You're doing physical motions, and you're seeing these sort of repercussions visually and audibly that are reminiscent of reality. Whereas older video games were kind of just like characters of reality. They weren't. You could understand what they were, but there was no aspect of reality to anything. You know, people are harping on Grand Theft Auto for all the things you can do in that game. I'm just curious, once VR hits mainstream, what those types of people are going to say about stuff like this. That being said, I think it's freaking awesome. It's a whole lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I got pretty angry. Not actually angry, but like, I'm gonna fuck this dude up kind of angry. And I was literally, these were the thoughts that were going through my head as I was punching in a dude's face, is what I'm trying to say. I was like beating him in the face, like he was already dead. I continued to punch him because he hit me. He hit me. And so yeah, you know, it's like, okay, I get pissed off playing Dark Souls, and like, oh, okay, I gotta get angry. I gotta kill this gaping dragon, or well, not gaping dragon, but you know what I'm saying, Gale or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'll just, you know, be better, and I'll push the buttons better, and I'll dodge the right way or something like that. But this is a little different. It's a little different to sit there and, you know, kind of bend over a little bit and punch the air repeatedly where this virtual guy's face is. Anyways, maybe I'm just blowing it out of proportion, but I don't know. That's the thought that I had in my head. So finally, we're going to go into the champion battle, and I look down immediately, and all I see is they give me this one flail, so I got to give them the middle finger for that one. No shield, no nothing, no choice, just one flail. And at this point, I'm so exhausted. Like, I am dripping with sweat. It's so tiring. I can't even pick this thing up, and I'm, like, dropping it, and just... I'm very tired. Okay. So we're going up against, I don't know what they said his name was. They each have a name. I don't remember what this guy's name is, but I'll give him the middle finger, too. So he is fully armored, 100%, and he has a giant hammer. And he has special moves, which I thought was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, though, we kind of got into this kerfuffle where I'm flailing around, and he's just doing crazy shit with his giant hammer. I managed to get his helmet off, though, which was my goal, and now I'm trying to crack his skull in. There, he gets unconscious, and it's pretty much over. I was hoping to grab his hammer and finish him off, but I was like, I'm not going to take the risk. Like I said, the champions are usually the easiest part, because it's just one guy. So, toss his body. And that's it. You can see the crowd is also really... Like, they're the opposite of the gladiators. They have giant heads and little bodies, rather than just having a giant torso. But, yeah, that's Gorn. Here I am just bending over, just gasping for air. It's like the most exercise I've ever gotten in VR. But, yeah, I mean... That's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to the game at this point, but like I said, it's just a hell of a lot of fun. It's $20. Again, I mean, I recommend it. I don't know if my recommendations mean anything to the people watching this. I imagine not many of them have VR, but if you do, you know, Rift or Vive, pick up Gorn, because it's pretty damn fun and may traumatize your children.